Hello, and welcome to a wrap up. Another wrap up. We love to see it. A month, read books, talk about them. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. We are in May. We have finished May. We're going into June. How has this happened? How are we here? How is it going to be the 6th month? When you watch this, it will be the 6th month. Insanity. We're getting a wrap up. We have 7 books. 7 books this month. Shit. I thought this was I read a few small books. That I'm not gonna lie to you. Most of them I don't have with me because most of them I borrowed from my university, from the library. So we're just gonna go through it in the order that I actually finished reading them, not the date I started, because some of them took me a while because I'm buddy reading, etc. So the first book I finished this month was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This was for the Discord buddy read pick, and it was picked by Grace. She won this month, and so we either chose The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie or Kindred, and Kindred won. Which is the one I actually voted for as well. So I was buzzing with that. It was stunning. It was absolutely brilliant. So I'm not going to go into this one too much because I'm hoping to do a discussion video, pre-recorded, edited, and then put up between 6 people. It would be me, it would be Grace from Grace Dion, it would be Joanna, it would be Kate from the Almost Book Doctor, it would be Pete from Ponderings with Pete, and it would be Michi from Heart of Michi. So we all either read it during or have previously read it, and I thought that would be a good group to have a discussion, having people that have read it before and new blood talking about it together, finding out what we discovered. So I think Kindred was probably had the most discussion around it in chat whilst we were reading it, because it was a truly visceral and powerful reading experience. So that the plot follows a character, Dana, who at the start of the book finds herself, she's in 1970s. Oh, shit, I should remember this. 1970s, I'm going to say, America. And she is a black woman, and she finds herself fainting, blacking out, and when she wakes up, she is by a river, and she hears a boy's scream, and she runs over. It's pitch black. She saves this child, and then something happens, and all of a sudden she's back in the present day. So the concept around this is we have got a character who, at random intervals, is transported away from where they are in 1970s America to the antebellum South, and it's her relationship with this child as she keeps on going back, and it is haunting, visceral, just gut punching, incredible commentary. I'm not going to say too much more because I do want to have the discussion and properly go into it, because I don't think this is a book you can truly put into words without having a discussion about it. 100% recommend. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. It was incredible. Next one, I do actually have here. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which is, where does it say? Who is it translated by? Translated by Ginny Tapley Takamori. And Convenience Store Woman is one that I've wanted to read for a while, because it's very quirky cover, first off. Love the colour. And I heard that it just goes kind of off the wall. And so the plot is, she's 36 years old, she's never had a boyfriend, and she's been working in the same convenience store for 18 years. Kiko's parents wish she'd get a better job. Her friends wonder why she won't marry. But Kiko knows what makes her happy. She's not going to let anyone take her away from her convenience store. A truly strange read. First off, I loved the prose. It's an extremely short book, 160 pages, large print. It's very quick to get through. Really accessible prose, really accessible story, all in all. And what this book does well is it creates this kind of feeling that it can go anywhere. That this book can do anything it wants and go anywhere. It could become a horror, it could become a comedy, thriller. It could go anywhere based on who it's interacting with and what this character is doing. And so Kiko is a very interesting character because she models herself off people. when she spends time with people, she describes it as them infecting her. And so her cadence, her mannerisms, her way of talking to someone or presenting herself is modelled on someone else because she doesn't know how to fit into society. And the only way that she feels comfortable is in her day job at a convenience store, where she knows what's expected of her, how to talk to customers, what she's meant to do. The society is telling her exactly what needs to be done. And so this book is very much about conformity, and conforming with the norm and conforming with those who break the norm. That you can still conform to the people that break away. That to truly be individualistic, sometimes you'll find that there is a place for you in regular society, and that it's about embracing who you are and how you feel. And it's the first book I've ever felt where I finished it and I felt really rejuvenated, because when you're at university and you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your future and what you want to be and who you are, it's easy to get lost and want to pursue different avenues to, oh, this would be cool because they're kind of cool, but knowing that's not who you are, etc. And this book does a wonderful job of just going, just be yourself. Whatever you want to do, you can do. At least that's what I took away from it. And so for a very quick read, I gave it 4 stars, I think. Super fun, super enjoyable. It's not doing a lot. This isn't a book that you're going to finish and be like, wow. Like, I felt like I became a new person. I feel like I read about the most exhilarating read I've ever read. This book is going to be like, I did not expect it to go the way it did. Not because it went completely off the wall, because it didn't. This book is doing its own thing, and it's just happy telling the story it does. And I really respect that about this book. So that's 1. No, that's 2 actually. Book 3, I don't have here with me as well, I borrowed it from the library, is Slaughterhouse V by Kurt Vonnegut. Been wanting to read this for quite a while. Anti-war book. Completely not what I was expecting. It was brilliant in the way that it uses structure and it uses narrative framing to tell its story. This was completely off the wall. This is a fictional story about the bombing of Dresden, about a guy called Billy Pilgrim, I believe his name is. Is that his name? It's definitely Billy. You're reading from his perspective through very different points in his life, and this is told in paragraph chunks that dot between perspective of him, but where he is in time. And this is the most undefinable book I've read. You cannot put this into a box. There's a reason that the top description of the genre on Goodreads is classics, because God forbid trying to put it in any other tight bounding of like, this is a war novel or this is a science fiction novel. This is just Slaughterhouse V. And so you are dealing with someone who is travelling through time, that they are dotting between points in their life out of order. At one point they're in Dresden during the Second World War. Suddenly they're in the future, they've got their job, they're before the war, they're just after the war. It's dotting all over the place. There's a point where they are transported onto a different planet and they meet aliens and how they interact there. It is this absolutely absurd, funny, heartbreaking meld of a book that is undefinable. That is the way I describe it. If you want to read something that you're going to go, well, I've never read anything like that before, Slaughterhouse V is definitely a book that you will leave and go, what the hell? And I can't tell you how brilliant it is, but there's a point, the book's about 200 pages long, and about 90 pages in, there is a bit of exposition that perfectly encapsulates what you've read and the whole point of the story and where you're going. And it lays out a roadmap in this absurdity and this flat image of time where things are happening out of place and completely disjointed. And it tells you how you're meant to view this book and how you're meant to think about it. And it's brilliant. And the usage of putting it directly in the middle, considering what it's telling you, there's just so much brilliance to this book. I did give it a 4 because it was one of those ones that it's much better as a whole than necessarily some of the reading experience as you're in it. But I still I don't think this is one that's going to go away from my mind. This is also, the next one, book 4, is one that I'm also not going to go into too much because this is a sequel. I've already told you about the first one, and this is just a continuation of a masterpiece. The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, the second book in the Life Ship Traders trilogy after Ship of Magic, is brilliant. I'm buddy reading these with Grace and Ben from Discord. Absolutely incredible books. There is not a single flaw in my head of how I view this. I do have problems, very nitpicky problems. Like, I feel like during Mad Ship, because it's so amazing and it's so perfect, I found myself getting very nitpicky. And there were parts where I was sending messages to Ben and Grace and I was kind of like, this is very nitpicky of me. I feel bad. But it's only because it's so brilliant that I feel the need to be like, where are any flaws in this? Where are the flaws? Read the Life Ship Traders. Even if you don't want to read the rest, you don't have to read Farseer. I'm very much part of the camp that's like, you don't have to read it. You can go back and read Farseer after Life Ship. It's up to you, bro. Whatever you want to do. Read Life Ship Traders. Masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. Won't have an argument about it. Won't even entertain the idea that this trilogy is not a masterpiece. Next up was my lowest rating of the month, even though I did also enjoy this book. The Vegetarian by Han Kang is absolutely insane. It's translated by Deborah Smith. The best way I can describe it is that on the back, it doesn't have a description of what the book is. Oh, it has it on the inside cover. Let me read you this. Young Hai and her husband are ordinary people. He's an office worker, she's a dutiful wife. Their marriage is interrupted when Young Hee, seeking a more plant-life existence, commits a shocking act of subversion. She refuses to eat meat. Thus begins a disturbing and thrilling psychological drama about taboo, desire, rebellion, and fantasy. That's a fantastic description of this book. This book does so much in such a small amount of time, whilst doing also very little, that it is a thrilling read. I very much did want to put it down. And so the book is split into 3 sections. And it's a very interesting thing where this story revolves around the story of Young Hai, this woman who has decided that she's going to become a vegetarian in Korea. But it's not written from her perspective. It's written from the people surrounding her and their impositions on her beliefs and her conformity in her life. And for the first 2/3 was very interested in that, because one is from the perspective of a husband, and a husband is the single worst human being to ever exist in all of mankind. He is the worst. There's no other description for he is a terrible person. A lot of terrible things happen in this book. Trigger warnings. If you've got one, have a look at this book because it will probably contain it. And so the first bit, I felt like I completely understood what it was doing. It was very interesting that this author, who is a woman, is writing this book about a woman and her subversion and her decision to break out of the norm and write it from the perspective of the man. I thought it was very interesting. And then the second part is also from the perspective of another man. And so there was a trend forming here. And I thought that this book was going to be about the ways that men justify abusing women through different parts of being a human being, be it from being a patriarchal figure in this society that you feel it is your duty to do it, that you are the man and they are there to serve you, whether it's the idea of being an artist and it's that I'm breaking out, I'm discovering who I am as a man, as a human being, and I can't help that I've hurt someone along the way. I thought it was going to go through and show how different types of men abuse women and how that is portrayed and how that is explored. So for the first 2/3, was super interested in whether I was right. And then it turns out that I'm not really, because this book is doing so much that it kind of abandons that for the final third. And as a result, my thoughts shifted. And so I can understand people hating this book. I can understand people loving this book. It is also an extremely strange read. And I do plan on definitely reading the next book, the Human Acts by Han Kang, because there's enough in this book for me to go, oh, very interesting ideas, very interesting writing style. There are a lot of provoking thoughts that come out of reading one of these books. And so I'm definitely going to continue with Han Kang. This book maybe just wasn't what I wanted from it, given what I was receiving at the beginning. And so that's more on me than the book. But you can't help that as a reader, so bear that in mind. Penultimate book is The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay. And this book was fantastic. Non-fiction. I borrowed it from the library as well, so I don't have it with me. I would 100% recommend reading this book. If you are in any way interested in becoming better versed and able to have a more informed conversation surrounding the transgender issue, the way that the media have kind of witch hunted it, the way that they have sexualized it, the way that they are choosing very particular arguments and points of view that they want to hear to kind of lower and put the conversation in a box, to not truly explore what is happening. Just the ways in which transgender people are oppressed and silenced every day, and why it is deplorable, and how to function in a wider context of society, that this isn't just the transgender issue, this is overlapping with all kinds of people that are victimized and exploited and condemned in society. So for a non-fiction, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was very informative. That is one thing I do enjoy about non-fiction. Sometimes you'll see that they're very personal stories. This is very much a person writing, not necessarily about their experience, even though that does come into play at some points, allowing the facts, the figures, the statistics, and the voices of others to create this picture that is needed to voice just a point of view. And so, yeah, 100% recommend. I think you should read it. And then the final book is one I actually do have as well. It's one that I've been wanting to read for a very long time. I've been putting off because I know that I have a finite amount of his books to read at the moment in this universe. Red Country by Jo Abercrombie. And so I buddy read this with Joanna. It's the first buddy read I've done with her, and it was a fantastic experience. To give you an idea, this is the 6th book in the First Law universe. This is the 3rd book in the standalone trilogy, otherwise known as the Great Leveler trilogy. I'm not going to read the synopsis because it is the 6th book in a series. Characters being there are going to be spoilers for later on. I can say that the most of the plot doesn't involve previous characters. That's the great thing about Jo Abercrombie, is he does a great job of introducing new characters constantly, but having such a large roster that old characters are constantly turning up, and it doesn't feel like a fanfare thing. It just feels like they're there. First Law is brilliant. It's one of my favourite things. One of my favourite series, without a doubt. I love it. Everyone should read Jo Abercrombie because he does something so different. And I'm not going to go into it too much because Joanna does want to do a discussion on her channel, which when it happens, I will share about. And so I don't want to spoil anything because I had real big thoughts about this book. She enjoyed it more than me as a whole. I gave it 4 stars. I loved it. I loved Abercrombie's writing style. I think he's brilliant. But to give a kind of idea of like just an appreciation towards Joanna, because buddy reading is something that I am typically not for. Because quite often you can be left behind or you're going too far ahead. Sometimes people have a prior knowledge and there's kind of like spoilery elements sometimes. I find that they're sometimes difficult to get into, which is why great buddy reads are something you should really appreciate. And I do think they are good because I buddy read with Grace all the time. Every month we do a buddy read, and it is such a great experience because you read at a slower pace, you're indulging in the story, you allow it to just really pass over you, and you're having discussions about what you think's coming, what's happened. It's like a richer experience reading it with someone else. And I felt the same thing reading this, that it was interesting where at certain points Joanna was enjoying something more than I was, but I appreciated it more because of what she was thinking about it and how she was conveying it. And some of the some of the descriptions of how she views Abercrombie's writing from a stylistic point of view. So she was talking about the use of metaphors and similes and that type of thing. And it's something that I personally hadn't really thought about. I think more about the satire and the trope playing. That whenever I think of Abercrombie, that's what I think of. But when she was discussing the concept of the metaphors and the motifs that come up throughout, was really enlightening. And so I think that basically what I'm saying is, you get a chance to buddy read with Joanna, goddamn do it. It's well worth it. Same with Grace, same with Ben, same with everyone I've buddy read with. I am becoming a proponent of doing very, very limited amounts of buddy reads for specific reads where you have an idea of how much you're going to read a day, sticking to that, knowing that you can talk about it safely without someone spoiling it. Basically, buddy read should be a safe zone. That's my opinion. And so that's it. What a wild ride that was. I feel like I lost my mind during that video. So yeah, I read 7 books, pretty much all brilliant or extremely interesting, and I feel like I'm getting into a real stride of knowing what I want to read and sticking to it, not feeling the need to dot around. I feel like I've rooted out books that aren't for me particularly, and I'm now really hitting a stride of just being like, I know exactly what I want to read, and bashing them out. So, if you have enjoyed, if you have any thoughts about the books that I've talked about, write down in the comments. Please do like and subscribe as well. It really does help out, and I do appreciate it a lot. And as always, just have a lovely rest of your day.